Next week, I actually have my consult with my doctor to get my blood work done and talk to my endocrinologist and finally get the ball rolling on starting T. Hopefully the next time you see me or the next 2 times you see me, I will be starting T. Yay! All right.
The transgender movement seems to be everywhere these days. Politics to sport to chocolate to the library, and there has been a recent focus on transgenderism and children. And it's playing out in statistical data relating to self-identification. Here is some example. According to the Gallup poll, around 7.2% of the current population is self-identifying as LGBTQ+, and the majority are aged 25 and under, the famous Generation Z. That's double what the statistics showed a decade ago. With the rise in indoctrination of gender ideology and sexual identity in society, a marked increase in gender confusion is to be expected. Indeed, according to a study in Spain, the conclusion was that the transition is really a growing phenomenon that involves clinical, psychological, and social problems. Another study revealed that between 2013 and 2020, there was a marked increase in gender-affirming mastectomy among adolescent girls. Just in Montreal in 2019, the Metropolitan Surgery Center in Montreal said that sex change operations have increased by 35% over the past 3 years. Now, imagine 4 years later. Many American states have adopted or contemplated absolute limit or prohibition on transgender medical treatment, expressing concern that young people will later regret irreversible body-altering treatment. But what will happen to people whose surgery is vital to their life and not a simple confusion created by society? Estella is one example among many children who will be detransitioning for many reasons. The latter was one of the pioneers under the influence of the trans wave, which offered an opportunity to reinvent itself without really knowing the exact consequences of the long-term effect of transition treatment on the body. The important thing to know is that the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, regulates the use of testosterone as a drug, but it has not specifically approved the use of testosterone for gender transition. Thus, studies of long-term testosterone intake are not documented in order to know the problems that this hormonal intake can cause after several years. Estella wants to share her experiences in order to raise awareness among young people of the real consequences of such hormone therapy on the body.
My name's Estella Suarez Hamilton. I am 27 and I'm a detransitioning woman. I was transgender for about 8 years. I started when I was 18, seeking transition, calling myself Philip, going by he, him pronouns, telling my parents, my family, and starting to go to a gender therapist who was a transsexual woman. And at 19, I acquired my recommendation for testosterone and began injecting myself with testosterone. The side effects, to put it in a very short way, is it's premature menopause. After about a year and your body recognizes that the testosterone is going to keep happening, your ovaries and the reproductive system will stop producing as much estrogen. And the side effects, the symptoms of low estrogen, those will start to show up. And those are facial hair, low voice, losing your hair. And then the internal effects are heat flash, foggy brain, you cannot think. It's like, you know, when an old woman will ask if you repeat something over and over, is very much like that, but in a young person. And just the worst bladder control, which is something that's not listed. You become an elder with your bladder, essentially.
And what make you realize that you were on the wrong path and you needed to reverse your decision?
It became very clear to me that the testosterone and these side effects were related. You know, by understanding the known side effects, you can look at the inserts that the testosterone will have. There's a whole list of different things. On those inserts, it will tell you that testosterone is not FDA approved for the use of anything else other than males with low T. And it's absolutely not studied, absolutely not approved for long-term high-dose use in women. So with that understanding, I started knowing that the more that I was going to inject myself, the longer, these effects were just going to continue to get worse. And I would either end up needing a hysterectomy or needed to stop. So I decided that it was time to stop that cycle and begin the process of healing my body.
Do you regret to have done the beginning of the transition?
Yes, that's something that was asked when I first started medically detransitioning. You know, a young man my age asked me, "Do you regret?" At the time, I was still Philip. I still had facial hair. I was still presenting as male. But I had stopped the testosterone for medical purposes, to stop the atrophy and to stop the heat flashes. That was my main intention. And when he asked me, "Do you regret?" that was the first time anybody had asked me. And I really had to think about, yes, I'm an adult with regrets. Every adult has regrets. It's just so much more obvious now, the things that I am regretting, because I have facial hair. I have to shave every single day. I have the low voice and the Adam's apple that's grown large and obvious. I have vaginal atrophy, which is painful. It makes sex difficult and makes my vaginal health very difficult and mysterious for doctors. So those are things that I do regret. And I wish that young women would understand that these risks and these effects the effects that they're seeking are symptoms of illness. It's not masculinizing effects. So I regret thinking that I was going to get masculinizing sex characteristics when in reality I received atypical female sex characteristics. I had experienced testimonies. I had watched testimonies of other trans men who had gone through double mastectomy and were telling other people that this was not resolving their dysphoria. And that did have an impact on me.
When you were a little girl, what bring you to question, first of all, your gender like identity, and what make you really want to go and transition?
Yes, that's a big question. So, as a young girl in 4th and 5th grade, I was going to school in cross-dressing and I was using a different name. And the 2 times that I did this, I was doing it during my mother's deployment. She was in the Air Force. And I was very lonely. I didn't have a lot of friends and I was struggling in school. So I had, in my child mind, decided that this was the way that I was going to go and make male friends and become a new person and really start fresh somewhere that I was feeling like I wasn't succeeding. And this was just in 4th grade, so I didn't have a lot of complex thought. And I had also seen these influences as I became a teenager online. And I remember specifically in one of the videos that you saw me in, I was actually discussing the introduction to gender identity and the idea that your gender can be separate from your body. That concept was introduced to me online in an online comic that was something I loved, one of my favorite comics. And so they had just introduced this, and that was my introduction into the trans cyber sect. The trans cyber sect is a online community that thrives online. It's perpetuating its information online. However, they do have real life impact. So there will be groups that start online, and then people go into real life and will seek treatment. Or people will go into real life and seek these community groups where they originated online. And that's what makes it a cyber sect and not just a cult, because it starts online and it's very largely thriving online, and then it can go into real life and it can have real life impacts. And it's a term that I learned from Dr. Patricia Thornton. She's a political science doctor. And so she coined that term, and it was in a congressional committee. That's where I kind of read about it. So when it comes to trans cyber sect, I applied the trans part to this because that's how I think is the best way to describe this community.
We see more and more children transitioning. What is your thought about that?
Yes, I think that is absolutely a product of the trans cyber sect. The prevalence of social media. I was just the start of this social media generation. And at the time we had Tumblr, Reddit, 4chan, Facebook. Those were the main ones, but now we have so much more. And at the time, trans was still so new. It was just around 2014, 2015. In the US, gay marriage had just become something that was protected and allowed. So when I was introduced to the trans cyber sect, it was still very new, and there were just a few leaders. Now there's this huge network of think tanks, influencers, government officials, nonprofits, non-government organizations who have made a huge investment into this community. And they're putting a lot of their investment onto online. And then when you come to the lockdowns, all these children that are just spending their entire day online, their community and their socialization is easily accessible to the trans cyber sect. And the girls, the other detrans women that I've spoken with, we all come to the consensus that we are building the foundation because there's going to be a tsunami of detransitioners, especially women who are going through the symptoms of low estrogen, completely unaware of their biology and reproductive health. And they are going to feel so alone, just like how many of us feel so alone and confused. And so a lot of us see our role as the early detransitioners of our generation to set some kind of foundation and get the ball rolling for detransitioners to have some kind of care after they exit the trans cyber sect.
So if you agree that school and teachers should not be involved to talk about gender ideology as sexual identity with their children, please go and sign our petition at stopclassroomgrooming.com. On this website, you can sign the petition. You can also share it and make a difference. Thank you.